Hey guys, it's Biggs. Now today's video has been a long time coming. We're almost into spring, and this video happened, actually most of the footage was taken last winter. Hi guys, I promised you guys this video for a while. It's just been an absolute nightmare for me to go through 285 snippets of video as well as about 150 pictures and try to put something together that's worthy for this guy's place. Now I've told you, I've taken you guys to this guy a few times already, but you've never been able to go behind the scenes for a full tour. We went there last year, and I gave you we sat down with him on his deck and his lanai, and we did a nice interview. We've done some ones about some nutrition. We've done one about palm trees, but the one you guys have all been asking for and you've all been waiting for is a behind the scenes tour, a full tour of Cichlids of the Americas. So, let's get to her. Hey guys, it's Biggs. Now you guys saw part one about a year ago with the legend. Today, we're gonna do part two. And we're gonna take you behind the scenes at Cichlids of the America with the guy here. You know him now, Mr. Dan Sharifi.
Hi guys.
Yeah.
Welcome to my fish room. I think this is the first video that we've ever recorded with Chris, with probably anyone that encompasses the whole fish room.
You wouldn't let me before.
I wouldn't let you before. I didn't know you well enough.
Do you now? Do you think you do now?
We'll see.
Yeah?
We'll see. We'll see. No thumbs downs or anything like that.
All right, guys, let's take a look inside. Now it's really hard when you're walking around this place. The absolute sheer diversity of the fish, the quality of the fish. Bear in mind, almost absolutely everything in this building, and there's another building too. There's actually two of them. It's almost all been wild caught by himself and his wife Martha on their many, many adventures all over South Central America, as well as they also have a whole team of collectors in all the different countries which over the years he's built relationships with. I encourage you to check out his list because it is constantly changing. But here we go. Let's go take a look at this amazing place that is Cichlids of the Americas. All right, guys, you can probably see around us. It's a pretty large place. Lots of stuff to see. I'm going to take you around and show you everything. But first, Dan, you got to tell us, this is a pretty insane fish room. This is not an average hobbyist fish room. How did this even come about? How did you even start?
So we started by basically, I had all these fish in the garage for the longest time. Not all of these fish, but a good portion of my fish in the garage. And we went from like a 2-car garage to a 3-car garage to a 4-car garage. And then all of a sudden, what happened was we moved. And when we moved, I decided that I wanted to keep, a fish building. So one of the preconditions on buying a piece of property was, can we buy a piece of property that would allow us to put a separate building, a standalone building on it?
Zoning, like a zoning issue?
It's a zoning issue, and then also in Florida, it's a homeowners association issue because you have all these small homeowners associations that that have bylaws that don't allow you to put up separate buildings or agricultural buildings. So when we started looking at buildings, I realized that there wasn't that much of a difference between a 1,000 square foot building, a 2,000 square foot building, 3,000 square foot building.
Football stadium size building.
So the only difference really was in the cost of concrete. So
for the base, yeah.
And what ended up happening was I started having these wild dreams at night about what could I get for 1,000 square feet in terms of how many fish could I get for 1,000 square feet.
How many tanks can I fit in there?
And then I said to myself, this probably isn't the best way to go about it. So the best way to go about it was, let me decide what kind of fish I want to keep, or how many fish, how many different species I want to keep. So
you were a guppy breeder before this, right?
No, I've never bred guppies. But what I did was, I wrote down, I played a little game with myself, and it sounds stupid now, but I think anybody that's kept fish has probably done this. I'm like, let me list all of the fish that I've ever kept, and let me list all of the fish that I want to keep. So
kind of your wish list sort of thing, yeah.
So a wish list kind of a thing. And then the other thing I did was, after about, I don't know, 60 or 70 species, I'm sure there was some that I had forgotten, and I started going through the books, and I'm like, oh, I want to keep that one. Oh, I want to keep that one. Oh, I want to keep that one. Before you know it, you start thinking about how many fish there are, and the viability of running something as a business is, initially, the hobbyist mentality is I want to keep, a community tank, or I want to keep a species tank, and I just want a male and female of this. Well, that doesn't really work for if you're trying to run a commercial business, because what happens if you lose the male? What happens if you lose the female? How long does it take to set up another pair? All of those things. So I went from setting up small tanks to setting up larger tanks to setting up community tanks, and then I finally decided that there are certain fish that work well one-on-one, and it wasn't probably enough to keep just one pair, so you got to keep multiple pairs.
And that's why you keep them in these, like this is kind of your own design, these things?
Yeah, these are my own design, but those, that thought process never really transferred into this design. What that was really for was, for example, Amphilophus species, like Midas, they produce a lot of babies, so if you produce one set of Midas, or if you have one pair of Midas, what happens if you lose a pair? So I decided I was going to dedicate 2 tanks to anything that was Amphilophus. And then there were certain species that just, my experience in the past, where spawning was a little bit more challenging, and it required more than one female, or the better setup would be a community, kind of transferred into this. I started out with 300-gallon vats, but one of the things that happened once is we had one cold snap day, and I lost a whole colony of Rostratus, and it was something silly. It was something due to ick. Yes. It was due to ick. I just didn't realize it, but it's kind of hard to tell if fish have ick, and in a dark vat where you're not really looking inside it, with a lot of detail every day. Yep. So I kind of lost that colony, and I was really heartbroken about it. What I ended up doing,
it's just such a readily available fish. You just hop down to your local pet store and pick up another group.
So it's kind of the same with a lot of these fish. So what I did was, I thought to myself, a lot of the tanks that are available right now in the hobby, they are basically 2 foot by 6 foot, and what they're really good for is viewing. It's not really designed for.
Well, it's also easier to not only just seeing the fish, but growing them in like the vats and the vaults and stuff like that. They're in ground. You don't see them. You see them from above, but black fish or dark-colored fish in dark tanks, it's not really conducive for it.
Yeah, the part of it is, I think a lot of this business is visual, where people want to see what they're buying. And, I wasn't good at it for a long time, and I'm still not that good at it because I'm not an expert in taking photos or taking video. But I can tell you, I was adverse to taking pictures and showing videos, because it's not conducive to running a business, in the sense that if everybody wants to see a actual picture of the fish that they're getting, there's hundreds of thousands of fish in this building, so I can pull fish out of a vat, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the fish that you get the next time I go around packing the fish. So in any event, what happened was I wanted to design a tank that allowed a couple of things. One was for the fish to be able to swim in both directions, laterally and horizontally. And the purpose for that was, anybody that's kept large fish long enough has had the incident where if you have a narrow tank, the fish freaks out and it slams itself on the side of the glass and it kills itself. So that concept becomes a lot more challenging when you have large breeders and a large quantity of breeders. And
and you put lots of different structure inside the thing, like the palm fronds and the pipes and the clay pots and stuff, and that gives the visual barriers. That gives the fish a definition that they can't see each other all the time.
I mean, everything that's, for the most part, and I shouldn't say everything, but one of the things that I learned is if you observe fish in the wild, if you observe any kind of fish behavior, whatever aggression happens, the quickest way is to break that line of sight, because they kind of hone in on each other, and then they build momentum, and when they build momentum and they're shooting towards that other fish, or towards that, whatever they're upset at, that's how injuries happen, either to their target or to themselves. Because they go too fast, they'll hit the side of the tank, no matter what the size of the tank.
And they need the momentum for fighting to make that damage if they're actually fighting.
So one of the things that we ended up doing is, we decided, okay, we want a tank that's big enough that, has good viewing area, but we also wanted some lateral space so that, a fish can escape. And we came up with like a 4 by 6.
You could have put them about a foot higher, though. for people like me.
I could have. Yeah, you're right. And they probably, it's one of those, you know, I know you say it jokingly, but it's kind of one of those things.
Well, this is better for maintenance. You don't have to have a ladder in each tank, so you're taking a big factor of maintenance out of the equation.
It's better for maintenance. What it's not better for is one of the little tricks that I always do is whenever we bring in wild caught fish, you know, to the extent that I can, I try to always keep those fish at like eye level, because I don't want them to see my motion walking by the tank, because it's not something that they're accustomed to in the wild. Now, they're just looking at my face and just a little head moving by, then it's different than if they're looking at...
That'd be a pain in the butt to try and work on tanks that are all up to this height sort of thing.
It is. We have a few tanks set up like that, and, you know, we'll typically, what we'll do is we'll typically move something from one of these smaller tanks, so, you know, we can see exactly what their behavior is, make sure that they eat, knock them out for any parasites and put them through quarantine. And, you know, shortly thereafter, oh yeah, there's a little frog there that's going by, a little toad.
Just appears.
Yeah. But what we decided, going back to this tank, was we wanted like we decided on a 4x6 template. And, you know, when you start designing or thinking about designing tanks, you run into a lot of little variables that you don't ever think of, like, okay, what's the maximum usage of one sheet of acrylic? Because these things come in 4x8 sheets.
Yeah.
So if you go 3 inches or 4 inches larger, then what happens is that
you waste a whole portion or something.
Yeah, and the cost goes up exponentially. So
you get these custom made for you.
Yeah, these were all custom made for me, and these they're wonderful to you know, to raise fish in. You know, the one thing I could tell you is, you know, you always want bigger. If you can go bigger, you always go.
Yeah, but you made it so you have lots of rows, lots of easy work, lots of easy access. You got them all drilled. So you're running water onto them. Is it running 24/7?
We don't run it 24/7. You know, the water is a little bit more tricky because, you know, we run water through solar panels, so that, you know, the water that comes out. And I know you can't see this right now, but if you're looking at it right now, this water is close to about 88 degrees. We got a sunny day, and then in the summertime, you got to kind of cut the water, because if you don't cut the water, your water temperature will shoot up to 110, 115, 120 degrees on a hot.
So heavily oxygenated.
Yeah, and the original version was, when we built this, we were running PVC everywhere, and one day I wasn't even thinking about it, and we started bringing in water from the panels without cutting it, and this is actually PVC. The original version of this was, we had PVC here, and it turned all of this PVC in this building within 3 or 4 minutes into spaghetti. It looked like spaghetti noodles. So we had to.
Because it was just too hot.
It was too hot, and it bent all of the PVC.
And when that cools, it stays in that shape.
It stays in that shape.
Yeah.
So, and it never dawned on me. I just walked out for a couple of minutes. I came back in, and then the next thing I noticed was, oh my God, all of the PVC looks like spaghetti.
Yeah.
So it dawned on me that what had happened, and this temperature gauge had shot up all the way to like 140 or 150 degrees. And it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hadn't run water all day.
Yeah.
So,
and you showed me the system outside. You now have different valves, and you have different zones, so you can control and make your own water that you want for each tank, because you're not dealing all exactly the same fish.
No, you're not. And then what happens is, you know, it's like all fish rooms, like any, you know, think about this, like it's a fish operation, but it's really no different than what you're doing at your home. It's just on a much larger scale. And there's always these evolutions that we go through. And, you know, part of fish keeping is always just learning. So, you know, you try to figure out, like, one of the things that we're working on is, you know, some of these fish have different water requirements as it relates to general hardness, carbonate hardness.
Yeah, I noticed on some of the tanks you had it marked in new wild caught that you brought in.
So what we do is we mark the water conditions of the area that we caught the fish in, and then the next thing that we do is we try to figure out how to mimic the water. So, you know, there's always different iterations of it, because I can assure you there's nothing more gratifying than bringing home wild caught fish, but there's nothing more frustrating than bringing home wild caught fish and not breeding them.
Or watching them die because you can't provide the right water for them.
So what happens is all the little details that you run into, those little details are just as important as the fish, if not more important than the fish, because having the product doesn't ensure that you're going to have success in achieving your objectives. So, I mean, what you got to do is you got to make sure that everything matches in accordance to what what their environment is. I mean, like one of the things that most people don't realize is fish have topographic memories. I mean, how does a fish realize not to swim any further because that's the end of the tank? If you look at archer fish, think about the fact that they have to be in a certain spot. They have to shoot at they have to spit at a certain level, and
they're off by millimeter or two. They don't eat.
That's right, and they have to know where that's going to fall based on where it is to be able to go catch that food. So I mean, they have to have a great understanding of their topography to understand how to succeed in that environment. So it's important to understand that topography in nature, because what you're ultimately trying to do is bring it in here and mimic the results that you get in nature, which is spawning and and the fish thriving in that environment. So it's all the little details that make the difference between the fish spawning successfully and not. Now, I mean, there's luck involved in it too. I mean, I can tell you, I've brought a lot of fish where other people have spawned them successfully, and I haven't had the same success that they have. And that happens too.
But you're not one individual sitting with one tank at home, watching it digitally day in, day out. You've got hundreds and hundreds of tanks. This is only one of the buildings.
Yeah.
And you literally don't have a lot of staff, but you and your wife and one staff member running everything here.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, I'll let you guys know something. And a lot of times I get an email from somebody who says, you guys is just me, my wife, and one other person.
Yeah,
so,
one employee that does the maintenance.
Yeah. So, I mean, and part of that is, and I'm trying to be humble when I say this. There's so many individual nuances when it comes to fish. It's just hard to teach somebody every last detail of every last species. So what we try to do is, I'll concentrate mostly on breeding parameters of the fish and when the fish get sick. And I'm like anybody else. Everybody's business and everybody's hobby that's been in this hobby long enough, they realize fish get sick, and it's not something that you can avoid. So I mean, ensuring that fish are healthy is a lot easier job if you're just doing it yourself than if you're trying to outsource that out to multiple people. And then there's sometimes things that that I can't figure out, that where the university is here, University of Florida is here, the aquaculture office is here, and if we can't figure out, I'm not shy about asking for help. Because
you got lots of good people here.
Yeah, it's more important to know what's going on than to kind of try to shotgun the fish, and and that becomes really costly when you're going and catching fish and something goes south and you don't really know what's
you didn't buy just 4 or 5 fish or 100 fish at a store. You're going out. You got collecting trips, you got permits, you got guides, you got all that stuff. You can invest just to bring one fish back. You've told me some of the stories before where you got $30,000 invested in bringing back one species of fish to here.
And what ends up happening, a lot of it was what ends up happening is it's a lot of the expenses affiliated with fish collecting is that it's always, if you look at a lot of the discussions regarding fish collecting, it always shows the fish that people have collected. What it never shows is the number of trips that they've gone and they've come back.
And all the red tape and the bureaucracy and losing a shipment.
Yeah, it never shows any of the time. Like,
they're always happy.
So what happens is, I can tell you countless, species that I've collected. You go there and you think that you're going to come back with a fish, and you don't come back with a fish. So it turns into a scouting trip. And then you go there again, and then what'll happen is you come back with some fish, but you don't come back with the actual number of fish that you thought that you would.
Yeah.
And then, you'll go back another time, you'll come back with a number of fish that you want, but they don't make the trip.
Yeah.
Or they don't make the way back. They don't make it all the way back. And then
these are all part and parcel of collecting.
So you don't ever see that aspect of it. Everybody always talks about bringing back one fish or bringing back. Yeah, I went to this location and I brought these 3 species back. And sometimes it happens that way.
Unlike the people out there, people on the internet, they just assume that going collecting means you just go to Mexico, and then you go to a river. And then there will be a store there, and then the guy just sells you the fish from that river. That's how it works, right?
It never ever works that way. I shouldn't say never, but there's a reason that certain fish are very prevalent in the hobby and others aren't. So I mean, if you take a look at a fish,
just for that purpose too, but there could also be the aggression level,
Sure.
the difficulty, the size, all those
Sure.
other things are
So
factors.
I mean, like you can look at a fish like Jack Dempsey, which is a fairly common fish in the hobby. A lot of people have it, and
none of it looks like what Jack Dempsey's are supposed to look
sure.
like.
But if you look at the distribution of Jack Dempsey's, it's pretty vast.
Yeah.
And it's highly prolific in an aquarium.
Yeah.
So what happens is, you have basically, two things going for you that are very, that are very important as it relates to the success of the fish in the hobby. They're easy to attain, and they're very, they're very prevalent in breeding, and they're easy to breed. They're relatively easy to breed. So it's one of those things that, a lot of these fish, you kind of wonder, why did that fish disappear from the hobby? Because first of all, it's not easy to find in nature, and second of all, it's not easy to breed. So, most of
They're mean as hell.
yeah. So a lot of that is.
And that's the factor that you're faced with every day. Is you get emails you're telling me all the time, and people are buying your fish, certain fish, not all of them, but certain fish, and they're taking them home. And they're putting them in their average aquariums, 75s, 100s, and stuff. And they think they should be fine, but some of these things are hell on wheels, and they need 300, 400 bigger tanks.
I think there's a lot of factors to it. I mean, I think some of them require large tanks. One of the things that I always do is, the reason I got into fish keeping is it's one of the few areas that you can constantly learn new things. And I'll ask hobbyists, I'll ask people that are in the scientific community about what they think about certain fish, and I don't ever assume that what I know about the fish is accurate, because really, even when you have this many fish or this many species, all we really know about the fish is anecdotal information as to what we observe about our particular fish in this environment, in the environment that we've presented them. We don't have a huge amount of data.
Well, the one advantage you have over most hobbyists is actually the majority of the fish here you've collected. So you've also got location information, what the habitat looks like. You've taken all the measurements and stuff.
I've either collected them or I've had people collect them for me.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's a lot of it is collaborative, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of people out there that are phenomenal collectors that they rely on us bringing in fish for their livelihood. So where it makes sense, we'll pay somebody to collect fish. Where it doesn't make sense, we'll go capture the fish ourselves, because I think there's some local knowledge that would take me or you a lot of time to attain, whereas they may know exactly where that fish is.
Yeah, if you know the indigenous name that they might give that fish, the mahora or something like that, you could say, I'm looking for this, and then they'll know what you're talking about.
And typically they know where the most colorful ones are, or the best ones are, or where it's most prolific. So I mean, it's all these little details. So, but I think the one thing is that to be successful, at least what's worked for me is to constantly try to learn, and to try to learn as much as I can without any ego. And if anybody ever asks me a question, I can share my experience with them. But my experience is not absolute. It's not. It's
you can
not.
only share what you have.
It's what I've seen, and it's what's worked for me. And it may work for others, but it doesn't mean that it's the only thing that'll ever work. So I mean, that's just, it's really important for me to always remember that, because the one thing is, with fish keeping, as soon as you think you know everything, this hobby will make you humble, and will make you realize that you don't know anything. So, I mean, what we concentrate on a lot is understanding, the environment of the fish, the nutrition that the fish requires.
Well, we're going to do another video for you guys as well. Dan has a very, very different way of looking at fish nutrition that we've talked about. We're going to do a separate video on how he goes about feeding everything in this fish room for the success that he has. So that'll be something separate, guys.
So I'll just preview it with this, that nutrition and making sure that you're feeding the right food, the right quantity of food, the right blend of food is instrumental in these fish doing well. And I'll tell you, it's kind of like this. It's all fish foods are designed to have balanced nutrition. But if you think about it, different species have different requirements, and you wouldn't feed the same food that you would feed lions, tigers, and cats. While they're all in the same, house cats are the same, technically in the same family as lions. They're just different versions of them. But the truth of it is this: they have way different nutritional needs.
And you've got every representations of every type of Central American and a lot of South American stuff here. You got everything from piscivores or fish eaters, predators, to molluscivores, to sifters, to herbivorous species. You've got it all here. So you're right. There's no one magical food.
There's not a magical food. And then the other thing is, I'll preface it by saying, there's a lot of great information out there about feeding and about fish maintenance. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to share just my experience with you and what's worked for me, and as opposed to what hasn't. And I can share with you what hasn't worked with me as well too. So.
So what's next on the agenda for Cichlids of the Americas? As you take over the world with some of the best cichlids in the world here, Cichlids of the Americas, what's the next phase?
You're being too kind, first of all. So, but
there's no collection I've ever seen that's anywhere near this level.
So, one of the things we're always looking for a new fish. So, one of the things that we're looking at doing probably in the near future, in the next month or two. I don't know when this video will air, but probably by the time it'll air, hopefully we'll have done it already. But we're looking for a particular alfari that is in a specific region in Costa Rica.
Yep.
And
back to Costa Rica. Yep.
Yeah, we're going there just for that one fish. I think we could bring back some other stuff, but I think that's really
your target.
That's mainly our target. And then we're probably going to do, before we do Costa Rica, which will probably be in March, we're trying to put together a 4 or 5 day trip to Panama to catch.
Just an in and out.
Yeah, it's just a short trip. We're in Florida, so it's a lot closer to fly to Panama. It's about a 2-hour flight to Panama City.
It's like a 4.5 hour flight for me to come here.
So we're trying to do Panama, and hopefully, our target is the green umbi in Panama, and we're also.
That's a fish that hasn't been around. Like I remember Rusty having it, about a dozen years ago, 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah,
and I don't think I've seen it since.
We're hoping to have luck with it because I think the fish is not limited to one river, and we're hoping that it's a pretty easy target.
Well, I wonder if it's going to be like the ones like from Colombia. Back in the day, Colombia, we just figured umbies was the one that we've shown, the blue umbi. But you've got the blacks, and there's all these other variants that people have started pulling out. I wonder if the green one, that's the Panamanian one's going to have different locales as well.
Yeah, the blue one is the common one everybody knows. The black umbi was brought by Chris Craig, Umbi King.
Okay.
And he was the guy that originally brought him, and it's one of those things. Chris is a good friend of mine, but I'll tell you this.
This is where we throw Chris completely under the bus.
No, Chris is actually a really good friend of mine, and he's gone on a couple of trips with me. I shouldn't say he's gone on a couple of trips with me. I've gone on one trip with him. The Belize trip, Chris actually set all that up, and then he went with me to on the Panama trip. But going back to the umbies, he's the first guy that brought back the black umbies. I don't think anybody knew about this fish.
I'd never heard.
Until he brought him back, and he brought back.
I've read the normal umbies. That's like 86.
Yeah, he brought back 2 varieties of it, and the stories he'll tell you about what he went through to bring those fish back is crazy. I would never do it. But,
that's what collectors are willing to do.
Yeah. So that fish probably would not have been around had he not maybe it would have been around by now, but he was the first guy that brought that fish back. But going back to the green umbi, so we think that we can catch that fish, and then the other fish that we're after is calabrens, and I think they're in similar waters, or they're close by, they're nearby. Okay. And then, but based on what I've seen on calabrens, it seems like different locations have different different colors and different patterns. So it'll be interesting to see what we come up with. And then, if we have time, we're going to go to the other side of Panama and catch.
4 days, remember, in 4 days.
So yeah, we're hoping
If they have time.
we're hoping to go to the other side of Panama and catch more Ratismo.
Yeah, you have that pair in the back of the real.
Yeah, there's four of them in there, and I wrote the story on Facebook. I caught 14 of them, and I only brought back 4, throwing back the other 10 because I didn't realize how attractive the fish would end up being.
Yeah.
And I think I made a big mistake there, but who knows?
But you got 4 days, no problem.
So I think if we do it right, it'll take us. We'll probably get there at around, I think about noon on the first day, and then we have to drive towards Darien, in Panama, which is the Colombia side.
Yeah.
And
For Darien Heroes, right?
It's the Darien Gap. You don't want to go all the way that far because it's a little dangerous there. It's a national park there. But I think if we
Natural park, full of bad people.
Yeah. So I think what our target is to go. I think if you go 5 hours, based on what we've mapped out, and this is all the legwork that goes into it. But based on what we've mapped out, we think we have to drive at least 5 hours towards Darien from Panama City before we hit the first river that we think that may contain the green algae. So
it's landing at noon, starting at noon, and driving 5 hours. You're looking at dinner time before you can even start on the first day.
Yeah. So what we're probably going to do is we're probably going to go there the first day. So the first day will be a travel day, and then the second day we'll get up early. We'll try to catch the fish, and if we catch the fish, what we'll do is we'll work our way back from the farthest point.
Okay.
And what we'll do is hopefully by the end of the day, if we start at like 7 o'clock in the morning, our fishing will be done by about 2 or 3, and by the time we get back to Panama City, it'll be about 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So that'll take us into day 2. So then, one of the parts of fish collecting is the second that you've caught the first fish that you want, the clock starts ticking on you.
Yep.
Because a lot of it is, if the objective is to bring back fish, then what's really transpired is if you don't make sure that you don't dedicate adequate time and care to that fish, you're going to lose everything by the time. So, in our scenario, in that scenario that I just painted, you're talking about maintaining a fish in an environment that's neither an aquarium nor its natural environment for 3 days minimum.
Yep.
So what we're hoping to do is make our way back, and then the next day we would catch a flight out to David, which is about 6 hours away from where we want to go to for the catching of Ratismo and some of the other fish that Espressai are also nearby. So we'll see what we catch. But that flight,
you don't know anybody that wants those.
Yeah, that's a short trip because the fishing time is really condensed. So we would be on a 7 a.m. flight to David. There's about 5 hours of driving. And
Each way.
Yeah, we'd be there at noon. You'd have to fish, and then you're basically stuck there until 5 or 6 o'clock until you're done fishing.
Yeah.
And then you have to be back the very next day, which is now your 3rd day or 4th day. You have to leave bright and early so that you can make it to Panama City, catch the afternoon flight back to Florida.
Yeah, it's a direct flight.
It's from Panama City to Florida. It is, and there's like a interstate. Inter-country flight where you're flying from Panama City to David and from David back the next day. So it's a really condensed time frame, but the way it's designed is you're trying to maximize your output in the shortest amount of time to ensure that the fish that that you captured.
Yep.
On
So
day
go
one.
for smaller amounts in a shorter period of time. You guarantee success because you're not just going after bringing back a firemouth and bringing back another fish that's already there. You're looking for some stuff that's pretty specific that's not really in the hobby.
And that's really the worst part of fish collecting. I'll tell you, the absolute worst part of fish collecting is virtually every time that you go, you will run into something that you want, okay, but that you're not there for. And then you got to make that decision right then and there, whether you're going to bring that fish that you want or live with the fact that you didn't bring it back.
Yeah.
So Ratismo was the last one for me. But the other thing, one of the things that we caught was when we were in Rio Este, we caught some absolutely gorgeous Siboldi that were about 6-7 inches. And you know, in nature, that's pretty big for Cybolda.
Yeah.
You'll see them everywhere, spawning at 2-3 inches. But we caught some 6-7 inch ones, and I bagged them up, and I wanted to bring them back. And when I was looking at them, I'm like, this is just insane.
That's a real challenge to keep it alive for that length of time too. The amount of days before.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing was, you know, the entry point into the real Esty where we caught the fish. We just went back that very day on our way back, and we're like, okay, let's just let the fish go back into you know where it came from, because you can't. It doesn't make sense to bring a fish that size back. And you know, then you go through all these permutations in your head where, okay, this is a great looking fish, it's going to have unbelievable genes, but it's bigger than the ones that I have at home, and it's going to probably kill you know, half the ones that I have at home.
It's going to need an entire tank by itself.
Yeah, so then what happens is then I have to deal with bringing back another fish that looks exactly like this, and so it's one more trip. So it's a really challenging thing. I know it sounds crazy, but it's...
well, there's not infinite space either, right?
Yeah, there's not infinite space, and the other part of it is it's kind of, the only thing I can equate it to for people that have gone fish or that have not gone collecting is if you go to a fish store and you see a fish that you want, you walk out of the store and you don't buy the fish, and then you think about it all night long, and we've all had those nights. Yep. Like, should I get that fish? Should I not get that fish? And then you go there the next day and somebody else bought the fish, and then you know that feeling is an awful feeling. You're like, what?
Now add on the fact that that fish store isn't in a country far, far away.
Yeah, so it's a lot of these little things that you know that you don't think of, that you know that are you know that are not, they're not supposed to be stressful, but they are stressful. So, but it's one of those things that you know you got to be focused on what you want, and then the way I get over it is I always just kind of say, you know, at least I came back with what, you know, the objective that I set. If I do, and if I don't, if I'm not successful, then what I try to do is every trip I go, I try to learn more and more about the environment. Because you know, observing the environment, taking water readings, looking at the topography, measuring the temperature, measuring salinity, measuring all those little things, they all come in handy. They're all useful, and you know, some of the things that come in handy, you know, actually work out. You know, they transfer really readily into an aquarium, and others don't. But you know, the ones that you can transfer, you kind of want to bring with you because you want to reduce the stress on the fish as much as you possibly can. So,
so the road never stops. The adventure continues. What do you think, guys? Cichlids of the Americas, thumbs up, right? Hit the button. Lots of thumbs up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Chris.
I sure hope you enjoyed today's video. It was a lot of work to put together, and it was a long time coming. But I really wanted to ensure that it truly showcased Cichlids of the Americas as it really is. A stunning collection of some of the best New World cichlids, healthy, vigorous, and in impeccable shape. This place is absolutely spotless, and their integrity rings true in the stock that they offer. Dan and Martha are two exceptionally gifted and passionate aquarists, and I'm truly honored to call them my friends. What was your favorite species that you saw today? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.